This conference will now be recorded.
We're recording? Yeah. Good. So this Saturday, this Shabbos actually is Tisha B'Av. This Friday night and Saturday is the 9th of Av. Okay? Typically, not this year, typically but of course it gets pushed off until Sunday. Okay? Because the only time we fast on the Shabbos is Yom Kippur. That's the only time we would actually fast on a Shabbat. Tisha B'Av gets pushed off in this case to Sunday. Normally on Erev Tisha B'Av, so if Tisha B'Av is during the week on a Thursday, then on Wednesday, right? If it's on a Monday, then on Sunday. On Erev Tisha B'Av, we have a whole host of things that we do. The most prominent of them is what's called the Seuda Hamafseket. What is a Seuda? A meal. Where else do we have the word Seuda? Seuda Shlishit, right? The third meal on Shabbat, right? We have our Shabbat Seuda. We have our Kiddush Seuda luncheon. Seuda means a meal. Seuda Mavseket is the separating meal. And that meal, the last meal that we have before Tisha B'Av, is done that it's very, very sparse. All we have is bread and hard-boiled egg. Hard-boiled egg is usually used in the context of avelut, of mourning. Okay? It ties into Pesach also, right? On Pesach, on the Seder plate, we have the egg because that's to remind us of the sacrifices. But we don't have the sacrifices. So we sort of mourn over the fact that we don't have those sacrifices. The first meal that's given to a mourner is eggs. Why? Good, good. Esther said it has to do with what we call that circle of life, the inevitability of what happens at a certain point. Hi, sorry. Right? The inevitability, the circle of life. And that is meant to give a certain comfort when a person focuses on this is what happens. This is part of the deal that we sign up for. So that meal, the Suda Maseket, is had while you're sitting on the floor and eating bread and hard-boiled egg. And typically that hard-boiled egg is dipped in ashes. Okay? You don't do anything that's gonna harm you physically, but I burn a little tissue a little bit and I dip a little bit, and that way, ashes, right? But you dip it in, right? And that really sets the mood as you go into Tisha B'Av. That sets the mood as you go into Tisha B'Av. Being that it is Shabbos, so none of the restrictions of Tisha B'Av apply. It gets pushed off to Sunday. And since it is Shabbos, we don't have any of the normal Erev means eve of, any of the Erev Tisha B'Av, eve of Tisha B'Av practices. So therefore, on Shabbos, we eat normal meals: meat, poultry, wine, grape juice, whatever you normally do, you do. There are no Tisha B'Av restrictions. And there is no Seuda Mafseket. So you have on Shabbos, we have 3 meals. So that third meal is not bread and eggs and ashes. It is what you normally have for your third meal. The only difference is that normally we start eating shalashudas late in the day. Right? Shalashudas is the third meal. We eat that late in the day. And we continue eating all the way until nightfall. And then we do Birkat HaMazon, the grace after meals, and then we daven Ma'ariv. Over here, we have to stop eating earlier. Why?
Because the fast begins at nightfall.
The fast begins at sundown. Okay? The same way that Shabbos, the day of Shabbos is about 25 hours. Why does that make sense? Why is Shabbos 25 hours? A day's 24 hours last time I checked. Why is Shabbos 25 hours? We Jews like to make things complicated. But why?
Just to make sure you add.
Just to make sure, but explain, yes? Just to make sure about what?
You light 18 minutes before sundown and then 42 minutes after for Havdalah to make sure that you're not transgressing.
Okay, but it's actually more specific than that. When does day one end and the next day begin? Well, when the sun is setting until that point, it's definitely still today, this day. Once the stars come out, it's definitely the next day, right? Because the Jewish day begins at night and goes into the day. So until sunset, let's say today is Tuesday. Today, until sunset was definitely, Tuesday is Yom Shlishi, the third day of the week. Wednesday is Yom Revi'i, the fourth day of the week. Once the stars came out, and they've come out just about now, Wednesday is definitely beginning. Yom Revi'i is beginning. But we have that dusk period that is a safek, that there is this unsurety. Is from sunset till stars out, is that still the previous day? Or is that already the next day? So when it comes to Shabbat, we have to play it safe. So therefore, on Friday we say, oh, Friday night, Shabbat, maybe it begins already with sundown. And that's why once the sun sets, it is Shabbat. We don't light candles, right? The candle lighting time is 18 minutes before that to play it safe because we don't want to get too close to sundown. But sundown, so from the time the sun sets, but let's say the calendar says candle lighting 6:24 and it's 6:27. It's 6:30. You haven't yet lit candles. What do? Light candles. Why? Because if candle lighting time is 6:24, add 18 minutes to that, you have 6:42. So until 6:40, let's say, you're safe. It's not yet sunset. Okay? But now when it comes to Shabbos ending, we take that same safek, that same unsure period, that same gray area period, and say, well, maybe it's daytime. So therefore, maybe it's still Shabbat. So maybe Shabbat began with sunset on Friday. Maybe Shabbat doesn't end until the stars come out on Saturday night. That's how we get our 25 hours, because we wait 42 minutes typically after sunset is when the stars come out. We light the candles 18 minutes before, 18:42, 60 minutes, 1 hour. That's how we get our 25 hours. So now come to Tisha B'Av. We have to, let's say Shabbos ends, I'm taking a round number. All right, it's a little bit early now. I'm just saying Shabbos ends 8:30 this week, let's say. Actually, a little bit earlier than that, but let's say Shabbos ends 8:30. So 42 minutes before that, before 8:30, right? 42 minutes before that would be 7:48. So actually 7:46. So Shabbos is going to go all the way till 8:30. But at 7:48, actually 7:46 is when sunset. So therefore, we have to still treat it as Shabbos. We also have to treat it as the start of Sunday. The start of Sunday means the start of Tisha B'Av, which means the start of the fast. So therefore, we need to stop eating by 7:46 on Shabbos afternoon, because we have to treat that both as Shabbat and as Tisha B'Av. Since it's Shabbat, right? Now, what are the restrictions that come about on Tisha B'Av? We don't what?
Don't shower.
Oh, okay. Don't shower, don't wash.
Don't eat.
Well, let's go first. We don't eat or drink. Okay? If anyone is pregnant or nursing, you could speak to me. Okay? But we don't eat or drink. We don't bathe. We don't even wash. Right? When we wash our hands in the morning, the Negelwasser, the Tiltedayim, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, normally we wash up until our wrists. Right? Here we're only going to wash up until our knuckles. Okay?
Knuckles being here, then I thought it was always done here.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I just want to confirm.
Yeah. Okay. If your hands get soiled, if you've used the restroom, right, then you would wash your hands to clean your hands. Okay? But otherwise, we don't wash. Okay? So don't eat or drink. We don't wash.
No anointing.
We don't anoint. We don't put any creams and stuff on. Good. We don't wear leather shoes. Right? Like an avel, like a mourner, does not wear leather shoes. Okay?
Leather belt's still okay.
Leather belts, leather skirts, not an issue. Right? Hey, leather pants also, that's what, if that works for you, whatever it is. Right? For me, it's more like a leather belt. That's a little more relevant. Okay? But, yeah. Okay? And, I'm sorry? Oh, we'll come to that soon. And we don't engage in marital relations. Okay? Now, we stop eating 7:46, but we're not going to take off our leather shoes at that point because it is still Shabbos. And Shabbos overrides. Okay? But the eating, that we stop at that point. Okay. Therefore, the schedule this Shabbos here at Beth Jacob is going to be different than usual. Shabbos morning we'll daven as usual. We'll have our Kiddush luncheon afterwards as usual. But typically later on in the day we daven Mincha, we have our third meal, and then we daven Mariv. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to daven Mincha right after our Kiddush luncheon. At 1:35 we're going to daven Mincha. And then everyone can do as they wish, right? But Mincha is taken care of. When you're home sometime during the afternoon, you will have your third meal on your own. Before what time? 7:46, okay? And then Shabbos ends, I believe, 8:27, 8:26, something like that. And that's exactly what it is. So at that point, you'll say the words, Baruch Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'chon. All this going out in the email. It's going out tomorrow from me. Okay? And that is your quasi-Havdalah, your quasi-ending of Shabbat. And then you'll drive to shul. You'll take off your leather shoes. And you'll drive to shul for Mariv and for the reading of Eicha. Eicha is the book of Lamentations written by Jeremiah the prophet prior to the destruction. He's writing about the destruction that will happen unless we turn things around. And tragically, we'll discuss it more as we get closer, but the words were not heeded. We will read Yirmiyah Eicha, Megillat Eicha, those 5 chapters. Then we say some Lamentations, shorter on Saturday night, longer on Shabbat morning, okay? And then we go back home. Now, Esther mentioned another restriction that we have is like a mourner, we sit on a low stool. If a person is not in the physical condition to be able to sit on a low stool, getting up and down, then one does not need to. Typically, we'll turn these chairs over somewhat, and people will try to navigate it or bring a stool or bring a pillow. You can also just bring a pillow or a cushion. If you have an extra cushion from a couch or something like that, you can bring that and put that on the floor and we sit on that. That continues until Chatzot, until midday on Sunday. Now, midday, always confusing, is not 12 noon. You thought midnight was 12 midnight, and you thought midday was 12 noon. It's not. What is midday? Literally midday. If the day begins with sunrise and the day ends with sunset, then the midpoint between that is chatzot. Chatzot means from the word chatzi, half. So the midpoint is, right, and that is about 12 something, close to 1 o'clock. It'll be on the email going out. Once we reach midday, then we are allowed to sit on a normal stool. When you go to sleep at night, you can go to sleep normally as you do in your bed, right? There are those that try to diminish their comfort somewhat. You don't need to sleep on the floor. You don't sleep on the floor, right? But if a person normally uses 2 pillows, then one might use 1 pillow. You know, right? But we try to diminish somewhat, but we sleep normally on our bed. Okay? Sunday morning is Shacharit, morning services, 8:30, but it's going to go until about 11 o'clock. And that is, we have our normal Sunday morning services, but there's also Torah reading, and also there is keynote. There is many paragraphs, about 45 of these different laments. We choose 10, about 13 of them, and we have different people talking about them, explaining what they are, right? That's how we do it over here, but it takes a good part of the day. Okay? Those are, so that is Tisha B'Av. Those are the normal restrictions. We will now, tefillin are not worn. I know at this point you gentlemen are not yet wearing tefillin either way, but tefillin are not worn in the morning of Tisha B'Av. Okay? But in the evening, when we will reconvene, the time will go out. It's on the calendar. I don't have it in front of me right now. About 7 o'clock, 7:15 on Sunday. We will reconvene for mincha and then mariv, and after that the fast ends whatever time it ends. And again, it's going out in the email, and then the fast is over. But before you can eat, what must you do? Havdalah. Okay? The Baruch HaMavdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol that a person makes, the quasi Havdalah, allows a person to go ahead and do malacha and do the non-Shabbos activities, driving, things like that. It does not allow a person to eat. Okay? So Saturday night, we're going to just make the one blessing of Havdalah, which is the Borei Ma'orei Ha'esh, the blessing on the fire. The blessing on the spices we're not going to do because that is a bit of pleasure, and we don't have that pleasure on Tisha B'Av. Sunday night, we'll make a shortened Havdalah, the same type of Havdalah that we made after Yom Tov, which is just the blessing of the wine and the blessing of Hamavdia Ben Kodesh L'Chol, who separates between the holy and the mundane, etc., etc. Those are the 2 blessings that we will make, after which one is allowed to eat. Okay? Any questions on that? Yes, Esther.
I just have a question. So, also I understand you're not supposed to greet each other.
Okay.
Tisha B'Av, does that include Saturday night as well
as
Sunday?
Yes. So it's not a time for socializing, right? After we finish the davening, it's a time to go home, do some reading, get some sleep, right? The reading that we would do, right? We're not allowed to learn Torah on Tisha B'Av. Why is that? Torah gladdens the heart, right? Right? But those topics that are Tisha B'Av related, So that, which are, you want to read through Eicha, Lamentations. You want to read those chapters in Jeremiah, which is about, you want to learn the laws of mourning. All of those things one would be allowed to do, but otherwise not. So yes, that's correct, Esther. So it's not a time for socializing, and yeah, the same way that a mourner, is, people walk in, hi, how you doing? That's not how the mourner acts, right? They nod, right? Respectful, but it's not a time for socializing. Okay. The only thing you're allowed to have before Havdalah, just eating, is water. I once had a crazy situation where Natalie was running her sleepaway camp. So I was there for Tisha B'Av, and that was up in the Poconos. And Tisha B'Av afternoon, I decided I would take it was about a 2-hour drive. I would go to the cemetery where my parents are buried. A cemetery is, visiting a cemetery is an appropriate Tisha B'Av sort of activity. So I did that, and I caught mincha along the way, and I wasn't going to have a problem getting back up to the country. There was this crazy rainstorm, and the Grand Central Parkway, any other New Yorkers here, the Grand Central was flooded, and I was sitting in traffic there for hours. And I didn't get up to camp until about midnight. So I couldn't break my fast until midnight. I didn't have any grape juice. If I would have thought, I probably could have taken on some grape juice just to make Havdalah, had I needed to. But I didn't have that with me, right? I had some seltzer in the car. So I figured I gave myself a halachic ruling. Seltzer is water with air in it. So if you could have water before Havdalah, I could also have some seltzer. But yeah. So if you're going to do any traveling, you want to make sure that you are equipped for that. Okay? Good. Okay. Normally, after Tisha B'Av, some of the restrictions still remain in terms of a trim or a haircut and laundry. We would wait until midday of the next day. Why is that?
Because the temple continued to burn.
Yeah.
On the 10th of Av.
Yes, actually, most of the burning of the temple took place on the 10th of Av, and there were those who said that we should have instituted the fast on the 10th of Av, not on the 9th of Av, but it was instituted on the 9th because that's when it began, and the beginning is really the harshest part to it. That's when it began, so it's the 9th, but certain restrictions continue until the 10th. But this year, Monday is the 11th. So this year, where Tisha B'Av got pushed off, comes Sunday night, there are no further restrictions. And I'm sure laundry's been building up in the households with, right, all around. So, yeah. So come Sunday night, laundry can be done, showering regularly, those who want to give a trim, whatever you like to do, right, that happens right away afterwards. Okay? Good. Any questions? We're all good?
I think so.
Okay, good. So let us then continue with some Shabbos with the time that we have left. Okay. Did we do washing dishes last time? I think we did. We didn't?
Yeah, we touched on washing dishes.
Okay, let's go over quickly again. Page 234 in our Shabbat book over here.
Talks about electricity.
Yeah, so you guys tell me, what are the issues with washing dishes on Shabbos? What issues come up? Sponge. What's the problem with the sponge? Ringing. Schita is the Hebrew word for that. Good. But you can get a Shabbos sponge, which doesn't actually absorb, but is fairly effective in cleaning. Good. Other factors. Besides the sponge. Bar of soap. But as long as you're using liquid soap, we're good to go. Another factor.
Hot water.
Hot water, right? The second you take water out of your hot water out of your hot water faucet, what's happening? Cold water is going into into that boiler and getting cooked. So you can't use hot water. Okay. Another issue that could be an issue.
Aren't you supposed to only wash the dishes too that you're using?
Thank you, Danielle. Right. The issue is preparing for Shabbos for after Shabbos. That's going to be an issue. So if I need those dishes the next day or for later in the day, that's not a problem at all. I'm not preparing on Shabbos for after Shabbos. I'm preparing on Shabbos for Shabbos. But there's another way of looking at it also, which is a little more lenient, right? Let me ask a question. Are you allowed to make your bed Shabbos morning?
Yes, if it brings you in.
Okay, so on one hand, well, you're preparing for after Shabbos, right? That's if you're not going to take a nap. But even if you are not going to take a nap, right? If it bothers you that your bed is a mess, right? And that's going to take away from your Shabbos oneg, from your Shabbos enjoyment. So then I'm not preparing for after Shabbos when I do that. I'm preparing for my Shabbos peace of mind. It's going to drive me crazy if the bed is not made, right? For some, okay? So in that situation, one would be allowed to make their bed on Shabbos morning. So if the dishes are going to be piled up in the kitchen, causing me Shabbos angst, as opposed to Shabbat oneg, enjoyment of Shabbos, then one would be allowed to do that if that really is the case. Okay. Good. Okay. Good. Cleaning the table and tablecloth. Okay, let's go to 235. If water or a drink is spilled on the table, one may wipe it up only with a cloth about whose cleanliness one is not particular, so that one will not come to wring it out. Okay. So there are actually two issues. Okay, we'll see water in a second.
You actually bought a waterproof tablecloth, so if something spills,
So
it's
smart.
okay.
Yes, so when we had lots of little ones, right? So we would just get these disposable plastics that would go on top of the tablecloth, and that took away a lot of the don't spill. How about just do what you want? Kids, just
Go nuts.
try to get some of it into your mouth, right? Whatever makes it in. All the power to you.
So
Right?
is that okay then, Rabbi? Because if you were to put water on it, you just see the bubbles of the water on there.
Yeah.
Is that okay to just put a napkin on top of that?
Yes. Okay. Yes. So let's read through, then we'll discuss. If water or drink is spilled on the table, one may wipe it up only with a cloth at whose cleanliness one is not particular, so that one will not come to wring it out. Right? We don't want to use something that will come then to squeeze it out. If water is spilled on a tablecloth, one should not press on it when removing it with a knife or the like. Right? Don't press down on the tablecloth. Right? We're talking about not one of your, waterproof that everything beads on top of its tablecloths. Right? So if it has absorbed, you don't want to squeeze it out. You don't want to press down because that, once again, is squeezing water from the tablecloth. If colored liquids like juice or wine are spilled on the tablecloth, one should avoid spreading the liquid to other parts of the tablecloth when wiping it dry. Okay, that's interesting. Fair enough. The reason they give, if you look down the diagram, is you'll be dyeing the tablecloth. Okay? I'm not so concerned about this. That's not dyeing the tablecloth. That's killing the tablecloth. Okay? Right? You don't want your tablecloth to have these purple stains on it. Right? So, okay. Right? So looking down at that diagram, gosh, this family looks like my family when we were all the little kids. Okay, so wiping with a cloth whose cleanliness one is not particular about. Okay, squeezing fluids from a tablecloth forbidden. Dyeing the tablecloth forbidden. Okay, yeah. So nowadays we have those tablecloths that are really very non-absorbent. So as Danielle said, if something does spill on that, you wouldn't be able to push down anything. You don't want it, but you just take a cloth or a napkin, put it on top. It'll absorb, right? You still would want to do something that you don't care if it becomes very wet, and that way we're not concerned that you'll come to wring it out. Yes,
I read somewhere also where when it comes to wiping up spills, that you should put a cloth or a paper towel that's bigger than the spill. And not something that's just, I guess, smaller.
I'm not sure. That might be because that way it won't get too wet, so you won't come to wring it out. I'm not sure. Maybe that's what that has to do. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where that is.
To like if you have crumbs to wipe off?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that will let's see. You can go into Okay, so let's go into that. Right, crumbing the table. Right, crumbing the table. Right. If I'm not going to be eating there again, that Shabbos. Right. We're eating Friday night. Right, and Shabbos day we eat in Beth. We eat in the shul, and Shalosh we come back to eat in the shul. So I'm not sitting down at the table again on Shabbos. Can I crumb the table?
No. Only if it messes with your happiness.
Exactly. Right, exactly. It's like making the bed, right? If it's going to bother you that you've got this messy table, you walk into the house on Shabbos. Now, this is something that the wives are never bothered by this, but the husbands, this is something that really, really knocks them off stride. Okay, yeah. So, right. So, if it bothers you or it bothers your spouse, in which case it should bother you. So then, right, I call that the commutative law of relationships. What's the commutative law of mathematics? If A equals B, and B equals C, then A equals C. That's the commutative law of mathematics. I've coined the commutative law of relationships. This is important to you. You are important to me. Therefore, this is important to me. So it's important to my spouse that the table be cleaned. That's important to her. She and her good sense and good feeling is important to me. Therefore, it's important to me that the table be crumbed off. So if either partner in the relationship is going to be bothered by it being dirty, then it can be crumbed and cleaned off. Okay? Right? If when we have children over, right? So very often, all of a sudden, a good amount of food ends up on the floor, right? Right? If that's going to bother you, so then you could sweep it up, Shabbos, and clean it up. Right? You're afraid that people are going to step on it. It's going to get kicked around even further. It's going to get really mashed in. So that, right? There, again, I'm not preparing for after Shabbos. I'm preparing now for my Oneg Shabbat. What is Oneg Shabbat? My enjoyment of Shabbos. Okay? So that's with cleaning off the table. Okay.
When you say sweep it up, Rabbi, is a broom muktzeh on Shabbos?
A broom is not muktzeh on Shabbos. What you're thinking about is that if a person has an earth floor, right? Anybody have an earth floor in their dining room? Okay, I didn't think so. Okay,
Yeah, you
right?
can-
So if you have an earth floor, so then the sweeping would be problematic because that would be filling in holes and doing all things like that, right? But as long as you don't have an earthen floor, so then you can sweep on Shabbos. Okay?
Is it a matter of the bristle that you use for the broom as well, regardless of what floor?
I don't see why the bristle would. I don't see why a bristle would make. If you use it, if it's definitely going to be breaking bristles, right? So then that'll be a problem. But it's not like samurai sweeper, right? You're just sweeping, right? I would imagine that you're not necessarily going to be breaking bristles in the process, right?
So would it be safe to just use a plastic one just to make sure you don't?
You don't need to, right? If it doesn't if it doesn't normally break, right?
Costco.
Right? If it normally does break, that's called something that is an automatic, albeit unintended consequence. Remember the term we had for that?
Oh,
It had to do with the head of a bird.
oh.
The
Starts with a P?
psik ratio. Right? Remember, a little bit gory, but well before Mattel and Lego, so kids would play with the head of a bird. So, right, I can't flick off the head of a bird to give my kids something to play with, right? Even though I'm not intending to kill the bird, I just want him to have this, this type of a marble they used to play with. However, since sick ratio below Yamud, if you take off the head, will it not die? It's definitely going to die. It is an automatic, albeit unintended consequence. That is a problem, right? But when it's not what we call a psik ratio, when it's not an automatic consequence, right? So that's not going to be an issue. Let's take brushing hair for those of us who are blessed to have hair. Okay, brushing or combing hair on Shabbos. So what do we say? What do we do? What do we do? What don't we do? Esther.
You can use a soft brush.
Good.
That's not intended or won't be pulling out.
Right, but you should not use a comb.
Yes.
Why should you not use a comb?
Pull out your hair.
Because that's going to pull out hair. That's what combs do, right? You have a little knot that's going to pull out the hair. That's what happens, right? So that is almost an automatic consequence, right? If you have a very hard brush, then it's like a comb. That's a problem, right? If you use a soft brush, that's not a problem. Maybe that soft brush will pull out a hair, right? I'm not saying that's what happened, but maybe, but maybe it will pull out a hair, right? Okay, right? As long as it's not definitely going to happen, there are lots of maybes in the world. We don't go crazy over maybes.
I have
Yeah.
a question. So this past Shabbos, there was an incident where somebody's
Is this
hair.
confession?
It is, but it's not me. But I'm not going to put names. But it was somebody's hair was stuck in the chair, and I helped the person.
Someone's hair was stuck
in the chair, and they didn't want to rip it or tear it. But say that somebody did get up and that tore, that wouldn't be by choice of them. Like, would they be like? Is that a?
I wouldn't say. Look, you're not really expected to walk around with a chair on your head.
Yes, exactly.
for the duration of Shabbos, right? We had the cone heads, but I don't know if we have the chair heads. So.
So if a strand was of your hair was caught and you had to get up and it.
So you would do your best to, yeah. Look, I imagine someone with long enough hair, you could hold it over here, right, and then work on it, and that way, it probably won't hurt, because you're holding it down low and then working on it, and also so you want to do it in a way that you would avoid pulling out a hair.
So that brings up a question. So the question is I heard a rabbi one time didn't want to pull his hair, so he just held it. So is it the root that you're pulling, or is it you're just ripping the hair? That lady could have just ripped it off the chair and she would have been fine, or is it the root that would have been the problem?
Okay. Oh, that's an interesting point. The main problem is pulling it out from its source of life.
So the root.
The main problem would be the root.
So she could have grabbed it and just yanked part.
Well, again, the main problem is pulling it out from its point of source of life, right? It doesn't mean that you take a scissors and just cut it, hold over there and just cut.
Yeah.
That you also can't do. But you would try your best to avoid pulling it from there, and then say, hold it lower, and then work on it as gently as one can to try to extricate it over there. Yeah.
Is it also true that when you touch your hair, because of the tuma in it, like you have to ritually hand wash after? Is that only for men who are davening? Like,
okay, so it's not so much touching one's hair if we scratch our scalp, right? So there's certain places that are sweaty, oily. So then when we touch those places, we would wash our hands before making blessings or davening or learning. Okay? Good. Okay. Let's go to sweeping and washing floors. Let's see if he says I'm wrong. Okay. Sweeping and washing floors. It is prohibited on Shabbos to sweep an earthen floor, since sweeping can level the ground or cause any existing holes to become filled. One may, however, sweep a tiled floor. One may not use a broom made of straw or one where there is a likelihood that the bristles will break during sweeping. So if it normally breaks while you're sweeping, I was to get a new broom, right? But you wouldn't want to do that on Shabbos. Such a broom may not be used even on a tile floor. Okay. One may not wash floors on Shabbos. Okay. Why is that? What's wrong with washing floors on Shabbos? Okay. There'll be some schita action, right? Which is squeezing out, right? Whatever mop or whatever cloth you're using for the washing. Okay.
Is that also a weekly activity that you would do during the week?
Interesting, right? So Danielle's mentioning there's an idea of not doing weekday activities. One could argue and say, well, washing dishes is also a weekday activity, right? But it's really the weekday activities that perhaps would be considered more of a weekday activity. But it's more serious than that, because here we have serious, actual Shabbat infractions, right? We have the schita. Also, normally when you wash, I don't know how everyone does, right? At least the way we did in Israel, you take a smartut, a cloth, and you soak it in the water, right? And then what do? You put it back in there and you clean that cloth somewhat, right? So you're actually doing a bit of laundering, right? When you're washing your floor, you're also doing some laundering. Okay? Yeah?
I have a question about laundering, kind of related to this in regards to Tisha, but I can wait.
Oh, go for it.
So my question is, you can't launder, but it's not Shabbos, so you can wring out. I'm assuming you could wring out, like, say you're wiping the counters, and
Correct.
you can wring it out. So I had this happen where I wasn't thinking. It was after Shabbos. There was a lot of towels, and I'm wringing them all out. I'm like, there's no room to lay them dry. So I put them on a drying rack, and I was like, wait a second.
Wait, this is when?
This was. It's not Tisha B'Av.
On Shabbos? Not on Shabbos.
This was after Shabbos. So,
after Shabbos?
Yeah. So Sunday. So, but what I was thinking is it's the 9 days, so you can't launder. You can't wash clothes, so is that considered laundering if I've now rinsed it and now set it to hang? It's not.
That would not really be considered laundering, because, right? Is it laundered now? Once it dries, are you going to fold it up and put it into your
I hope not. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do your guests. Yeah. So that would not be an issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my halakhic ruling agreed with yours. Okay. That's what I told her. I said,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's do a few. Let's get to the end of this over here. Okay, 238, washing and ironing clothes, hanging laundry. Washing or ironing clothes period on Shabbos. One may not even wet a garment, right? Because wetting is also considered the first step of laundering, right? This includes soaking dirty diapers in water. It's prohibited to wring or shake off water from a garment or cloth that we're familiar with. Wet laundry may not be hung on a line to dry on Shabbos. Clothes which became wet on Shabbos may not be hung up to dry, even in a place where no one will see them. Okay, the problem there is that it appears as if you've been doing laundry. Laundry which was wet at the beginning of Shabbos may not be moved even after it has dried. This applies to laundry which is wet enough to dampen an article it came in contact with. Okay, so that's interesting. So let's say, right, I'm doing laundry and now Shabbos is coming, right? And stuff is in the dryer and it will finish drying. It'll finish drying on Shabbos. And we're talking about when I open my dryer, there's no beeping, there's no lights, right? So would one be able to use that clothing on Shabbos if they need that clothing on Shabbos? So that would depend how wet was it when Shabbos actually began, right? And if it was wearable when Shabbos began, a bit moist, right? So then that would not be an issue. Okay, 239, this comes up often, right? What happens is you're at the meal Friday night, everyone's wearing a nice white shirt, and then drinking grape juice. That's why at weddings, what do we use? What do we experienced rabbis who do weddings use? White wine. White wine under the chuppah. A white dress does not look very nice with a big wine or grape juice stain on it. White wine is the way we go, right? So wine spills on the shirt. What do? You want to rush into the bathroom and quickly, right? Can't do that. Sorry. If a damp piece of dirt or mud is stuck to a garment, one may not remove it with one's fingernail. One may remove it as long as this will not clean the stain that remains behind. Okay, in other words, I could lift off from, but I can't get inside to clean out. Okay, if the mud is dry, it may not be removed. Okay, that's another issue of okay. Lastly, 240, shaking off dust, folding clothes, polishing shoes. One may not shake off dust from clothes about whose appearance one is particular. A person should put his Shabbos clothes and hat in a place where they will not fall and get dirty, lest he forget this prohibition and come to clean these articles. Okay, folding a tallis or other articles of clothing may be done only if a number, are fulfilled, as long as it doesn't fold on the original folds. Okay, so that's right, because fold, right, so most of our well, I shouldn't say that. I guess certain pants or skirts you want it to be exactly on the pleat, right? And a tallis also normally you want it to be folded on the normal folds, right? So if you want to fold your tallis on Shabbos, you can fold it, just not on the actual normal folds. And after Shabbos, you would correct it. Shoes may not be polished on Shabbos. Okay, good. So personal grooming is where we will pick up next week. Okay? Good. Let me just send the text right now so I don't forget on our WhatsApp group.
Rabbi, I don't think we're added yet.
You're not added?
No, I'm not. Well, I didn't see it. Didn't see the WhatsApp come through.
Really?
Maybe
nothing's come through at all?
No.
Rabbi?
I thought I added you.
Rabbi? Sorry to bother.
17 participants. You, Danielle, Esther, Gabriella, Jackie, Josh, Josiah, Ladero, Leah,
You add me also, please?
Lily, Matteo, Rose, and Susie. Why are you not on? Let me try again. That's strange. Okay. Huh? Okay. So, good night. David Newstadter. Hi there, I'm using WhatsApp. Make sure I have the right number for you, David. 1 second.
Hey, tomorrow?
Yes.
Or do you want
I got 949 294 8222.
Yeah, that's right.
What's that?
Maybe it's the 1 plus that's an issue. Let me get rid of that.
Maybe. Oh, that could be it.
For school?
That's all like.
Okay, let me try that again. Good night, good night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Yes.
Okay, Mary, I don't, if I could have your number, just 1 second.
Do anything else in LA or
No.
just go and come back?
And your last name, help me spell it, Mary? S-P-O?
N-A-U.
N-A-U?
G-L-E. And especially when you're on.
And pronounce that?
Spinagle.
Okay. And your number?
310.
310
961.
961
0225.
0225. Done. Okay, let's go back here.
Should have tested Dave to see if he knows SMS.
What's that?
So he should have tested you to
Do
see
you
if
have
he knows
WhatsApp?
That's fine.
I do, yeah. It'll probably call me. It'll probably say Mary Spoon.
Well, it depends on how I drive it. I can usually do like once every
That's not, okay, let me add David.
Yeah. Cruise it slow
First.
not blasting AC.
But it seems like a really good investment though.
Okay, you've been added.
Awesome.
Okay.
Okay.
For some reason, Mary, your phone number is not popping up yet.
310961.
No, it's just when I put your name, it didn't say that. Sometimes, can you try this again?
Seems like something came through. Yeah.
There we go. Mary.
That's exactly why. If I go anywhere and he's home.
Good night.
Yeah, we could ask for how much sugar.
$6.
Okay, good. You should be on also.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
But if not, go to the little
Okay.
station.
I guess the +1 or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've had that issue before.
Okay. Oh, sorry, everybody. Good night. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Uh,
Bye-bye.